Welcome to the conversation at airsafe.com. I'm your host, Todd Curtis. On February 11th, 2018, an Antonov 148 aircraft crashed shortly after takeoff from Moscow. All 65 passengers and 6 crew members on board were killed. Later that day, I had a conversation with BBC 5 Live Radio, where I discussed some of the issues around this crash.
Russian emergency workers, as we speak, are searching the snow-covered fields outside Moscow for the remains of a passenger aircraft that plunged to the ground minutes after takeoff. The plane, which left Moscow's Domodedovo airport and was traveling to Orsk in southern Russia, disappeared from radar screens without making an emergency call to air traffic controllers. The cause of the crash is unclear, but investigators say they're considering 3 possibilities: human error, weather conditions, and technical failure. All 71 passengers and crew are confirmed to have died. President Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences to the victims' families and announced an inquiry into the cause of the crash, while Dr. Todd Curtis is a former aviation safety engineer and the creator of airsafe.com. Dr. Curtis, from what you are able to gather, what exactly happened here? Who was on the plane, and when was it first realized that something had gone wrong?
Well, the plane got into trouble shortly after takeoff. It was in the air, apparently less than 10 minutes. And what little information that has been gleaned from both official sources and other sources, the aircraft was in a rather steep descent, roughly, in my opinion, roughly twice what you would get in a normal descent in an aircraft before it disappeared from radar. And perhaps the most important clue was from the initial photos from the scene. There were scattered pieces of wreckage, but there was no central crater, no central place where large pieces of wreckage were visible. This is indicative of the aircraft very likely coming apart in mid-flight.
How could that have happened?
Well, there are many ways an aircraft can go through an in-flight breakup. And in fact, this particular aircraft model, the Antonov 148, it had a fatal crash in 2011 during a training flight where the aircraft went into an overspeed condition and it lost control, and in the process of losing control, pieces of the aircraft came apart in flight, and it too had an in-flight breakup. Now, that's not to say that this is what happened here, but certainly one of those elements, apparently faster than normal descent, which could be associated with a faster than normal airspeed during descent, could have contributed to something similar. But again, I have to caution, it's entirely too early to speculate ahead of the data.
I totally understand that. As I said, the authorities there are saying that this crash was either caused by human error, weather conditions, and technical failure. Can I at least confirm that you're ruling out the other 2 possibilities, weather conditions and human error then?
I'm not ruling that out at all, because weather conditions and other accidents have contributed to the flight crew's ability to have a sensibility of where the aircraft was relative to the horizon or relative to the ground. So that could have contributed to things. And in other cases, there could be something other than those 3 possibilities that could have figured into this crash. If they were able to recover the equivalent of the black boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, and glean information from that, there could be other possibilities that come to light in the near future.
Of course, sure. In terms of weather conditions, though, the weather conditions would have to be extremely severe, would they not, for any such catastrophe or calamity in the way that you've described it to occur?
Well, the weather obviously wasn't ideal. There was limited visibility and a fairly low cloud deck, which would have been something other than a clear blue sky condition. But certainly, this was a daytime event. This was not weather that was grounding other aircraft. And in this time of year, that's rather normal weather for that part of Russia. So flight operations in these weather conditions is not at all unusual. So I'm not sure if, in the fullness of time, that weather will be a severe factor. But again, it is early in the investigation, and I suspect in the next few days there will be a much more clarity as to what may have or may not have been a factor.
And human error? Does that kind of thing still happen on aircraft?
Well, certainly human error can be a factor not just of the flight crew or the cabin crew, but of air traffic controllers, of maintenance personnel, even of the leadership of the airline. And again, there's going to be an investigation that will look at the pilots, look at what they were going through physically and mentally in the days before the accident. There will very likely be a review of the procedures at the airline, including maintenance procedures, as well as any airport procedures that may have been or may not have been followed. The Russians have had a history of doing fairly thorough and fairly complex accident investigations, and I have no doubt that this is going to be one of those.
And the Russians have had a history of air disasters, haven't they, going back to the Soviet days?
Well, certainly. One has to keep in mind that Russia, and before Russia, the Soviet Union, have been very significant players in world aviation for decades. They've had a development of aviation and of aerospace in general that largely paralleled that of Western Europe and North America and the West in general, but it obviously has performed at a very, very high level. There have been generations of civilian airliners, generations of military aircraft, and of spacecraft that have been as good or sometimes even better than that which was completed in the West.
When an aircraft takes off and within 10 minutes it suffers some catastrophic incident that causes it to crash, and the aircraft isn't able to give any kind of make any kind of contact with air traffic control or ask for any kind of help, that would suggest that whatever happened pretty swiftly. Does that not point to some kind of I know I'm speculating here, but does that not point to some kind of inability of the crew to have been able to make contact? That is a crucial factor.
That's certainly a possibility, and to not to oversimplify things, but there are two reasons why there would not have been any calls out to air traffic control or any emergency message sent out. The crew was either unwilling or unable to do so. Now, they could be unable to do so because of system errors or a failure of the communication system. They could be unwilling to do so because they had higher priorities. A pilot, no matter what kind of aircraft they're flying, their first priority is to continue with the safe flight of that aircraft. And that takes a priority much higher than speaking to the outside world. So, again, I have to emphasize that until the investigative authorities look further into what may have been going on with that aircraft, it's too early to speculate why they didn't call out. But it's not too early to speculate that they did not call out. There has been no report from the Russian authorities or from any other authority that there was any sort of message sent out by the flight crew. Why that is, we'll have to wait.
Dr. Curtis, thank you very much. Dr. Todd Curtis there is a former aviation safety engineer.
For more information on airline safety and security, please visit airsafe.com. Thanks for visiting, and we'll see you next time.